Module 4c, Coordination, Reporting, and Partnership in Service Delivery. When you are supporting and providing care for a sex-trafficked, commercially sexually exploited, or at-risk youth, the appropriate staff in the program will need to develop a collaborative relationship with other partners involved with the youth. This usually includes the placing agency, such as child welfare, children's mental health, or a probation officer. When determined to be safe and appropriate, this also includes the youth's family or other supports. If you are unsure of your role in coordination, talk with your supervisor and follow your program's protocols. When a child is placed through a child welfare agency, an out-of-home placement plan will be completed within the first 30 days by the caseworker. This should be done in collaboration with program staff, providing care and supervision of the child. At times, youth may be involved in multiple systems at the same time, including juvenile justice, child welfare, and children's mental health case management. It is important to have clear coordination and communication on roles and how to best support the youth and family during the youth's stay in the program. Before a youth is discharged from a program, it is important to ensure the youth is connected with follow-up care and services. These services may include medical, mental and behavioral health supports, advocacy, and a Safe Harbor Regional Navigator, or additional Safe Harbor resources. An updated safety plan should be completed with the youth and their supports as the youth prepares to be discharged from the program. Many reports of sex trafficking or commercial sexual exploitation of minors may be investigated by law enforcement. This may happen at any point in a youth's placement in a residential setting. This can be a difficult process for these young people.
Voices of Safe Harbor. Words from youth in Minnesota's residential care facilities.
Once you're in the system, you become a number. You're looked at as a criminal or a delinquent because you're out here doing this to survive, and I don't think the system realizes it.
Being locked away in an interrogation room by law enforcement. In there by yourself with an investigator, they ask you questions and leave you there. You start stuttering and they think you're lying, but you're just really nervous. It's easier for sexually exploited youth to go on a walk, so they're outside and not uncomfortable. When they interrogate you or lock you up, it makes you feel like you did something wrong.
They should not press the victim to answer certain questions. They should be able to answer their questions when they are ready.
Let's learn next about the role of law enforcement as a partner and how you could interact with law enforcement when you are providing residential care for sex-trafficked, commercially sexually exploited, or at-risk youth.
Bobby Joe Pasternick, Minnesota Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
I am with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is our statewide criminal investigative agency in Minnesota. I'm exclusively assigned to the Minnesota Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force, and that is a statewide human trafficking task force. Currently, there are 4 task forces in the state of Minnesota that are specialized in sex trafficking. I'll start by talking about our task force, which is the Minnesota Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force. It is led by the BCA and housed out of the BCA in St. Paul, Minnesota. We currently have 11 full-time members, and those members come from various agencies to include, of course, the BCA, St. Paul Police Department, Minneapolis Police Department, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, the Anoka County Sheriff's Department. We have a federal partner through Homeland Security Investigation, and we are fortunate to have dedicated attorney from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, and we have an embedded advocate that works with our group daily, and that partnership is through the link. So that's all we do 24/7, 365 days a year. We investigate human trafficking. So our group actually investigates both sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Now, in addition to our full-time members, we have over 45 law enforcement agencies all across the state of Minnesota that attach to our task force on a case-by-case basis. So if a human trafficking investigation or a sexual exploitation of a youth investigation occurs in their jurisdiction, they can actually activate all the resources that our task force has at our fingertips. In addition, we have BCA agents assigned to the Predatory Crime Unit that are stationed all across the state of Minnesota, and they also support our task force and investigate human trafficking and other predatory crimes. So due to our statewide response, we have been identified by Polaris, which is also known as the National Human Trafficking Hotline, as being that centralized resource or hub for all tips coming in from that hotline. So what happens is any tip that has a nexus to the state of Minnesota will come into our task force. I will vet those tips, and if the tip is resulting in an area somewhere outside of the metro, I will make sure I contact either the local agency, or if we're fortunate enough to have an affiliate in that jurisdiction, reach out to them to have them follow up. And then, of course, we'll offer our services or our assistance if a local agency needs assistance with follow-up. Like I said, the BCA hosts the location of our statewide task force. And with that, we also have a BCA operations center. And that operations center is functional 24/7, 365 days a year. So anybody that wants to call in as a victim can call into that number, and they can self-report and access one of our investigators immediately. Or if law enforcement agencies want to contact us, the general public, they can make contact with that 24/7 operation line. So that would be available to you as well. And that phone number is 651-793-7000. When you call that number, please make sure you ask specifically for a human trafficking investigator. And then we are fortunate to have the TRUST Task Force. TRUST stands for Tribes United Against Sex Trafficking. And they have tribal PDs that they all work together across the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force and the TRUST Task Force often work jointly on investigations and have also been working jointly on proactive operations. But probably most importantly is when a client comes forward to you and decides they want to talk to law enforcement. They want to report their victimization. The task forces have trained investigators and know how to respond in a victim-centered and trauma-informed manner. I know with our task force, because we have an embedded advocate, we also have the capability of doing an initial dual interview with an advocate that we bring with us. So law enforcement and residential facilities can work together to increase the safety for a trafficked or exploited youth. It's important to recognize the power and control that a trafficker has over a victim, especially when we're talking about a child or a young individual or a vulnerable adult. They are not emotionally or mentally mature enough to recognize the danger, to make good decisions, or be able to assert the ability to separate themselves. We need to be concerned about things like their desire to run right back to their trafficker. Most of us would think there's no way they're going to want to go back to that lifestyle or that situation. That's not reality. The reality is they've been manipulated and controlled. There's fear. There's threats, maybe threats to them, threats to their family. And they're more afraid of not going back to their trafficker than they are of not being in that situation. There's times where we'll bring an individual to a safe shelter, and before we're even pulling out of the parking lot, they're running across the parking lot without shoes on, right back to their trafficker. Also consider that electronics, right? That's going to be their means to get back in touch with their trafficker, whether it's for a ride or whether they just need to check in. And that's going to give the trafficker right back to the direction and control that we're trying to help them, we're trying to separate them from. These are very dangerous people. These are people that prey on human beings. I could give you example after example, but we have time and time again recovered a victim from trafficking. They were provided services. They were put in a safe shelter, provided other services, medical attention. The next day, they're back with their trafficker. And we've literally had to go and recover them again from a different jurisdiction, a different hotel. This happens a lot. So anything you can do to consider, how do we keep these youth safe? If a client, a potential victim of trafficking does run or does go missing from your program, please contact law enforcement right away. And that would be your local agency where you're located at. File a missing persons report. And then in addition to that, if you are working with a sex trafficking investigator or one of the task forces, please reach out to them as well to let them know. A missing persons report filed by the local agency is a necessity, but that may not get communicated to the investigator for a period of time. The quicker that we get that information, the quicker we're going to be able to respond to help out that youth.
Apply what you've learned. To help you gain skill using what you've learned, try out your new knowledge on these examples. You'll have half a minute to write down your responses to the question. If you need more time, please pause the program while you write your response. Example 1. Danny has made the decision to leave the facility without a plan and without adult assistance. She disappears one day after breakfast. Another resident informs staff that Danny was talking about meeting up with her boyfriend, who staff suspects is involved in trafficking Danny. What are the steps your facility needs to take? These are the steps your facility might take. In addition to notifying appropriate caregivers, team members, and providers, you need to call your local law enforcement agency and file a missing person report. The suspected trafficking concern is also a mandated report to Child Protection. You may also contact law enforcement or the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Human Trafficking Investigators Task Force. Example 2. Devante, age 16, who uses the pronouns they and them, participated in a not a number prevention group this morning. During group, they started to open up about some of their own experiences with grooming and about some sexual acts they were pressured to do by their friend for another person. Devante was emotional and wants to connect with a therapist when they leave your program and return home. What are 2 things you need to note, and what should your follow-up steps be for Devante? Here's what you should note and do. Devante has started a disclosure of suspected trafficking, and this is a mandatory report to your child welfare agency. You are required by law to make the report verbally and in writing to your local agency. Prior to discharge, it is important to connect Devante with a culturally responsive and trauma-informed therapist for ongoing services. A Safe Harbor Regional Navigator may be able to assist in locating mental health support and other community-based services to help meet Devante's needs.
Practice quiz for Module 4 content. Question 1. What are the benefits to working with your local task force? A. You don't have a choice. You are required to call them. B. The task force has trained investigators who know how to respond in victim-centered and trauma-informed ways. C. Law enforcement on the task force knows what to do and will direct you on next steps for planning for the youth. The correct answer is B. The task force has trained investigators who know how to respond in victim-centered and trauma-informed ways. Question 2. Which is not a way Safe Harbor Regional Navigators can help you? A. They have relationships and connections with different service providers. B. Many regional navigators are trained in Not a Number prevention curriculum and can support you in providing that training to youth. C. They have connections to resources that may be culturally relevant to a specific youth in your facility. D. They can provide you details on local traffickers who may target youth in your program. E. They can help your staff prepare for disclosures by youth. F. They may be a bridge for youth when they leave your facility and transition to the next service, home, or placement. The answer is D. They can provide you details on local traffickers who may target youth in your program. Regional navigators will not provide private or sensitive information regarding traffickers. Question 3. True or false? Regional navigators have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week response protocol. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is true. Question 4. The purpose of Safe Harbor is A. To ensure all providers know what services sex-trafficked and sexually exploited youth qualify for. B. To make sure providers understand how to get the funding they need to provide the services for sex-trafficked or commercially sexually exploited youth. C. To provide a victim and youth-centered statewide continuum of care for sexually exploited and at-risk youth. The correct answer is C. To provide a victim and youth-centered statewide continuum of care for sexually exploited and at-risk youth. Question 5. Who should not be involved in safety planning? A. Youth. B. Whomever the youth identifies, including friends connected to the trafficker. C. Caregivers, if appropriate. D. Service providers. E. Child welfare case manager. The answer is B. Whomever the youth identifies, including friends connected to the trafficker. Youth should be allowed to suggest supportive people who they want to participate in their safety plan, but staff should ensure that people connected with the trafficking or exploitation are not involved in safety planning.